Hello, everyone. We're just going to give it maybe a minute more to get more people to join, and then we'll get started. In the meantime, if you want to share with us where you're logging in from, what the weather is like where you are, that would be awesome. You can use the little chat icon on your screen to share with us. Oh, I see the chat bar is disabled. Okay, you can just drop that in the Q&A. All good, we can just do it here. Hey there, Bree. Oh, Stephen, we're also in Montreal. Hi, Chelsea. Okay, I see a fair few in the audience now, so we can get started. Hello there, everyone, once again. Thanks for tuning in today in the middle of what I'm sure is a busy day for some of you. We're very excited for you to be here today. As a part of this fireside chat, we will be talking about the opportunities and challenges for camps in 2023. We'll be touching on themes such as staffing, safety measures, adapting to a post-pandemic world, and participants' changing expectations. Before we get started, let me go over a few housekeeping rules on the next slide. So we've already noticed that the chat is disabled. By default, also, all of the attendees are muted. Audio is available by computer and by phone. So in case you're having a glitchy internet connection or trouble connecting online, you can just use the phone number that was a part of your Zoom invite to dial in and listen to the audio. And finally, we really want to hear from you. So if you have questions or comments, please use the Q&A function to send those in. We'll be having a little Q&A session towards the end of this webinar, and so we'll get to those then. And lastly, we will be recording this session, and we'll be sending you the recording towards the end of the week. So in case you have to hop off in the middle, don't worry, you're going to get the recording of this as well. We will also be running a poll or two during this time just to gauge what you're most curious about. We'd love it if you could take a couple of seconds to answer that when it happens. It'll just pop over your screen. On the next slide. This webinar is brought to you by Amilia. Founded in 2009, Amilia is on a mission to bring e-commerce to activity and recreation industries. Built for humans, its Smart Rec platform empowers businesses and community organizations, as well as Parks and Rec agencies, to make offering, managing, and selling activities online fast and easy. With its back office and online store capabilities, Smart Rec can run it all and be the catalyst for your growth and community engagement. My name is Pallavi Borkar. I'm the product marketing manager at Amilia, and I will be your host today. We also have Alana, who's the content marketing manager at Amilia. She's on co-hosting duties. She's going to be keeping an eye on your comments and questions for us and jumping in every now and then. Say hi, Alana.
Hello, hello. Super excited to be here today.
Awesome. And then lastly, but most importantly, joining the conversation today is our speaker, Sara Haverkamp from the School of Acrobatics and New Circus Arts, or SANCA, in Seattle. Hi, Sara. Why don't you introduce SANCA to everyone in the audience and tell us a little bit about your role there?
Yeah, hello everyone. So SANCA is, as it says, the School of Acrobatics and New Circus Arts. We are one of the largest circus schools in the United States. There's a few others that are competitive sizes with us, but here in Seattle, we are the largest, and we are also the only youth-focused circus school in Seattle City. So we serve all sorts of ages. We do focus a lot on youth, but we have classes for adults as well. We offer all kinds of things. So if you can think of something that you would see at like a Cirque du Soleil show or another modern circus show, we probably teach it here. We have, your aerial. So if you've seen people on like fabric or silks is what it's called in the air. Trapezes, we have flying trapeze, we have static trapeze, juggling, contortion, handstands, tumbling, trampolines, all of that stuff. We don't do the like clowning, like traditional like clowning or like anything with animals or anything like that. That's sort of considered an old circus art. We're in the new circus arts. But we have a lot of classes, a lot of youth classes, a lot of youth camps. And so that's why I'm here today. I am our programs administrator, which means that mostly I create our class schedule every session of classes that we offer. But I've been involved in camps and I've been here for a lot of years, about 8.5 years now. So seen a lot of summers.
Got it. Well, cool. We are going to dive into the discussion, but before we do, I would like to run our first poll. It's just going to be asking you what you'd like to hear most about. And then that way we know what to spend a little bit more time on. So I'm going to be launching that now. You should see it pop up on your screen. We'll wait for 30 seconds to give everyone a chance to answer, and then we'll have the results. Also, if you hear my cat meowing in the background, it's because she's there and she wants attention. Okay, we've got about 34 in so far. I'm going to wait for maybe 10 more seconds, and then I will end the poll.
We also have one vote for staffing and safety protocols in the Q&A section.
Okay, cool.
Count that one in.
Awesome. Well, okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Here are the results. So we've got the issues and opportunities for camps as our top winner, followed by staffing and then managing registrations. So we'll try and focus on those, and then if time permits, we'll get to the safety protocols and adapting to a post-pandemic hangover. Cool. So I guess we can start with the one that won out. Sara, should we maybe get going on those? Like, what was 2022 for you? And what would you say were some of your biggest challenges this past year?
Yeah, so funny enough, I think the second highest one there was staffing, right? One of our biggest challenges was staffing this last year.
Right.
It was definitely difficult. I don't know if other people experienced the same thing we did, but this last year, summer of 2022, was our usual sources for staff just kind of didn't appear, didn't happen. We tend to get college students, a lot of college students on break. They come, they do some training because they're off of school before the public schools are usually. So they have a couple of weeks, they come do some training with us, learn how to coach the things, learn all of our safety procedures, learn everything, and then start coaching camps. And this year we had like 2 college students apply total.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was crazy. Yeah. We usually get a lot, and we had like nothing. So we actually ended up hiring throughout the summer because we were stretched so thin at the beginning that we had to keep hiring people, which made training difficult because usually we do our training before camp starts. So that was our biggest challenge. Some of the other challenges are like with the kids themselves. And so we'll hit on staffing again, I think a little later, but some of the challenges that we face specifically with the kids and with scheduling, in 2020, we actually had to downsize our space. So we had to work around the smaller square footage, smaller footprint. We had to, change how we had things. Specifically for us, we have a big like gymnastic size sprung floor for a tumbling floor. And we used to have some space on the other side of the room from the tumbling floor. And then when we downsized, that's where we put our trampolines. So we no longer had that space available to just fill in. So now it's got trampolines in it, right? We had other things that were similar, we have little tight wires that are very close to the ground so that they can learn to do tight wire at a safe height. We had to put those in one of our other rooms because it had been in the space that we lost. So we're trying to work around that. Now you've got kids trying to juggle and do tight wire, like really close together. So that was a really big challenge for us, is figuring out where to put the kids and trying to get really creative with it. So for us, space and staffing were probably the biggest challenges. I don't know if other people have other challenges that they've encountered that they'd like to hear about some of our solutions.
Yeah, we had something from Tracy that one of her challenges was struggling to keep the staff, and that some would kind of quit halfway through. I don't know if that anybody else wants to jump into the Q&A and if they had a similar experience or they had a solution for that. I don't know, Sarah, if you.
Yeah, so I'll go back to staffing a little bit more then. So part of our problem was we just didn't have enough people apply at the beginning of the summer. We have started now kind of looking for alternative sources for our coaches. We've got high school students that are in our programs. So one of our programs that we have here is a youth performance company. So we've got 4 different groups there, different ages, and they kind of meet different niches in what people ask for when they want to see a youth circus performance. And our kids join those troops because they want to do circus instead of soccer, or they want to do circus instead of swimming, or whatever like sport they would be likely to do. They do this instead. So it's after school, they come to SANCA. Our oldest performance company is here 6.5 hours every week, all year long. So some of those kids and some of our other, we have a scholarship funded troupe as well. They're usually also around high school age. So both of those groups, we have kids in those that were like interested in coaching, but we'd never really tapped that as a resource before. We had them coming in to do like volunteer hours.
Right.
So we transitioned them from this volunteer position to an actual paid coaching position during the summer. And that's how we filled in some of our gaps, as we found students who were already in our programs that were willing to coach. We also kept looking for people to hire. We reached out to some of the colleges in the area, the arts college in the area, got like a couple of theater people, which is not the same as circus, but it's related, and we can teach.
Complementary.
Yeah, that's kind of how we felt. We were like, if we can get you in here and you've got the ability to do the camp side of things, we can teach you the circus. That's literally our job. Like that's what we do, right? So that was part of our process, was just trying to find people, and maintaining them, keeping them around was also something of a challenge. we had a few people leave during the summer. We actually lost our camp manager halfway through the summer due to various things. At first it was she got jury duty, and it was the longest jury duty that she had that I've ever had somebody having to do. So she was just out for a month with jury duty, and she was like, I'm not coming back. There's 2 weeks left in camp. Have whoever was filling in for me just do it the rest of the time. So jury duty was one of our challenges over the summer. But we also had a couple coaches that had to reduce their hours because they were doing too many, and they just couldn't live with as many hours that they were working. It was just too much for them. And so we had to fill those in. I've found our plan going forward after the challenges of 2022 is try to preempt that. Some of our coaches were feeling super overwhelmed because they didn't feel prepared. And so they didn't feel like they could do as many hours because they were just so stressed out about the hours that they were doing. And if you can make the burden that they're carrying lighter, then it's easier to do that. So making sure that they have the training that they need, that they have the resources that they need. We're actually looking at doing something completely different with camps this summer. We're going to try doing something where we have coaches for the circus arts and camp counselors, basically, where the camp counselors aren't going to necessarily be teaching the circus, but they are going to be making sure the kids are staying sitting in their group and focusing on the person who's teaching the circus stuff, and really focusing on the kids and their behavior. And then the circus coach can work on just the skills. They just have to help the kids through the skills. They don't have to worry about all of the many challenges that come with teaching a group of 6 to 12-year-olds. So were there any other challenges, Alana, that people wanted to hear about?
Well, we're on staffing still, and something that I'm curious about is what tactics do you use to retain staff or to get them coming back year over year? Do you have something that works?
Yeah, so making sure that they have a good experience is honestly the best thing you can do for your staff. When you have people that have a bad experience, they don't come back, right? Especially when it's a seasonal gig like camps are, they are going to go away. And so you need to have something that brings them back. We tend to get people back partly just because they want to stay in the industry. The circus industry is kind of small, surprising no one. So we get people back because of that. We're a great summer camp opportunity. We are really the only summer camp opportunity for people who want to teach circus summer camps in the Seattle area. We didn't used to be, but since the pandemic started, every other group that did circus summer camps doesn't do them anymore. So we're basically the place to do that. So we get people because of that. They want to get coaching experience. They want to be a circus arts coach as their career. And so they come to us to get that experience. But if they have a really, really terrible experience, even if that's what they want their career to be, they're not going to come back to us. So making sure that you can help your staff every year and make sure that you're listening to their needs and supporting them when they make mistakes. So that's something that we run into a lot. We have these young high school, college age students that are coming in and coaching, and giving them the feedback in a way that helps them actually improve, and not saying you did this wrong, I'm writing you up. That doesn't help them, right? It's hey, you've been having a hard time getting to work on time. Why is that? Is it because you're on the morning shift? Because if you can't do morning shifts, we can put you on the afternoon shift. Work with your staff, right? Make it possible for them to do what they need to do for you. And that's a really important thing. We had some problems over the summer actually with because we were short staffed, we were having people do full days instead of
Yeah.
a morning and afternoon shift.
Mm-hmm.
And they were forgetting to take their lunch breaks.
Oh no.
And so we had to like go out there at lunchtime and be like, anybody who's on full day, now's your lunch break. Go. Like,
Yeah.
go eat lunch. And sometimes you just have to do that with your staff because some of them are just so dedicated to what they're doing that they forget to eat lunch, which is not good for them or you or the kids in the long run. So really,
it's also like physically and emotionally a lot of work. Like I'm sure they need that energy.
they need their lunch. They just weren't doing it. And so like making sure you have that and making sure that your management is going to do that sort of thing. So like here, I'm not actually our camp. I'm not going to be our camp manager. I've been managing our camps while we were transitioning because we lost our camp manager in the summer.
Yeah.
So I've been managing our like camps that are not summer camps up until now. But our summer camp manager is not me. So it's not somebody who's here during the rest of the year necessarily. And so making sure that when you hire that camp manager, you hire someone who can do that support for the type of staff that you get for those. So, you know, if you hire someone who's expecting everyone to be exactly perfect every time, it's not going to work because you got high school and college kids. They're not going to be perfect. You got to work. So you got to hire someone in your management position that can work with those imperfect staff.
Yep. Very good points. And so like, I want to maybe pivot just a little bit on, you have staff on one hand, and then of course you have the participants. I'm curious, like we all saw demand for these kinds of group activities completely tank during 2020. And since then things have been picking back up. So what has that experience for you been like? Like, is demand on the rise, and what has that experience been like getting back into the groove of things?
Yeah, our demand is definitely on the rise. Part of the reason we're looking at restructuring how we staff the camps into like the counselors and coaches role is so that we can actually fit more students in our space. So right now, the structure that we had for our camps in 2020 through 2022, we had groups of like 6 kids with one coach. And maybe the kids would rotate between coaches, or they'd be with the same coach all day, rotating through like activities. But either way, it's one person, 6 kids. Because with the things that we do, they have to be able to keep those kids safe. And it's really not possible to do all of the safety stuff that you need to do with a group that's bigger than 6, especially when their ages like 6 to 8, which is our younger age group. Right. There's just no way. So we're thinking if you have 2 people, you can make those camp groups bigger, and then they're still only taking up that like same space, because that's our big space challenge. If you get like 8 to 10 kids in a group, but they've got 2 coaches or two adults, 2 supervisors, then you can get more kids in the gym total because they're still taking up that one space. So that's something that we're looking for, because demand just keeps going up. 2020.
That's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. It's a very good problem. 2020, we had already started our enrollment before lockdown happened. So we actually start enrollment for our summer camps next Monday for 2023. We start the last Monday in January is kind of our goal for our camps. Sometimes it's the second to last. It really just depends on the schedule for the year, but it's always the end of January. And so in 2020, we had already opened camps, and we had a lot of like refunding and withdrawing people. And we're actually a not-for-profit organization. We're not a for-profit organization. So a lot of our students that like didn't feel comfortable coming, but knew that we were a struggling business because people couldn't come to circus class. So it's not like we were making any money. A lot of them actually donated their camp tuition for 2020, which helped us so much.
Yeah.
We love our people. But we had still quite a few people for summer camps in 2020, even though it was like we were all just starting to wear masks and nobody was vaccinated. We didn't even have vaccines. Like that was a whole experience. And then we get into 2021, even before 2022, and we had wait lists already on every week of camp, starting right off the bat.
Yeah.
And yeah, they, as soon as that first summer, they were like, get these kids out of my house.
You can just tell people were sick of being at home.
Yeah, and it has continued to ramp up.
Right.
We definitely had more people on waitlist last year than we did the year before. Part of the reason we're trying to expand our offerings for 2023 is because we expect those waitlists to just keep getting longer. We've had more people come back to our regular classes throughout this year than the year previous. So we really expect that to continue happening during the summer. People also tend to now feel safer during the non-flu season months. Since it seems that that's when the numbers go up and back down. So summer is a pretty safe month for everything, and we're going to get a lot of kids.
Right. Well, we're very curious, audience members, how full have your camp waitlists been this past year? So I'm going to launch a poll, and we're very curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. I know, shameless plug here, but Amilia has helped our wait list so much. We transitioned to Amilia actually in 2020, and the waitlist management that we had to deal with in prior years and the waitlist management now is night and day because Amilia does it automatically. And we used to do it all manually. So we really appreciate the automatic waitlist management.
And when you have a lot of programs, I can imagine that can be challenging to manage manually.
Oh, it's so hard. And our poor front office team, bless them, had to do so much work to keep track. So yeah, looks like it's actually pretty well split here.
Yeah, we have, we're very curious to hear from you, people that are answering the poll. If you've seen an uptick in your waitlist, how are you managing that? And have you had any challenges managing waitlists? Like, let us know, share your thoughts.
Yeah, we use, like I said, we use Amilia, and we use the option of as soon as a spot opens, it contacts the first person on the wait list and gives them a day to reply. And you can set how long you want that to be available, but that's what we do is they get one day, and 24 hours later, if they haven't signed up, it automatically emails the next person, which is
right. And like, have there been any tactics that you've been using to make sure that the participation and the demand for your programs stays high? Like you said that you're experiencing this constant kind of uptick. So what are you doing to make sure that keeps going on,
Yeah, well, the best form of marketing is word of mouth, right? It really, you can spend so much on so many things, like advertising, all of that, and people telling people about it is what's going to get you like guaranteed people. So part of it is, if you're offering, it depends on where you are too. Like if you're offering a good product, people will talk about it. They will share it with other families. Families share things with other families. It's great. We are also fortunate though to be in a very busy place. So Seattle has a lot of families and a lot of kids and a lot of parents working all day long who want to get their kids into something so that they aren't at home and they aren't just at daycare all day. And so for us, that's a big part of it. We're a year-round organization, so we also have a lot of students that come to us for regular classes throughout the year, and then they come to 1 or 2 camps during the summer instead of classes. So that's a big part of how our kind of system functions is just we have this community that knows about us all year long and then comes to us during the summer. We do
Oh, I think at least I can't hear Sarah. Lana, can you?
No, I think that her internet maybe has cut out. Let's hope it's just for a couple of seconds.
Yeah, we'll give her.
Okay, here we are.
Actually,
She's back.
Sorry about that, everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
no problem.
I think I stopped talking when I figured out that I was cutting out, but yeah, there's a lot of families here that
Yeah.
just talk about their camps, and that's kind of the main way that we get more people, and we advertise our classes the same ways and places that we advertise our camps. So.
Right. Yeah. So we have a question from Lisa here. She's asking, how do you determine capacity on your programs? Given the space limitations as well, how are you figuring that out?
Yeah, we went through a lot of different iterations of this in the last couple of years. So when we first came back from lockdown in 2020, our capacity was being determined by, I think at that point we were going with 25% building capacity. Yeah. So we couldn't get anything else in there. And we maxed out at a pretty low number. In like 2021 and 2022, when those were no longer concerns, we do two different things with capacity. We have sort of our minimum that we're very sure that we can staff. And actually what we do, so I said enrollment opens on Monday for our camps. We will be opening a limited number of spaces. We actually only open a limited number is, I believe, 30.
Okay.
So we have 30 spaces opening up on Monday for every week of the summer. And then we almost always, I think only 2020 was the only year that we didn't then expand those numbers. And 2020, we actually had to reduce them.
Right.
But we then in like May or sometimes April, we open up more spaces when we know that we're actually able to hire more camp coaches.
Yes.
Because our capacity is determined by the space we have and the number of staff that we have. So first we got to make sure that we have the staff, and then we can get up to a specific number. And that is determined for us in our space. We have different areas in our gym. So we have like a stage floor that's good for specific skills. And then we have our tight wire area, our juggling area, our tumbling floor, our trampolines, an aerial space. And that's kind of it, unless we also use our flying trapeze tent, which is a tent. It's literally a permanent tent. So for us, those spaces, if we have one group of kids in each space, they can move between the spaces.
Right.
But that's it. We don't have another space to put the kids. So for us, the main thing that we would do is determine like, this is how many groups that we can have. And for the last couple of years, every group has been 6 kids.
Right.
So what we're looking at for this year is trying to up that number so that we can get more kids in here without making our coaches' lives miserable. And that's why we're looking at this whole restructure, because we don't want to give more than 6 kids to one coach. It's just not safe. It doesn't work. So yeah, we're trying to get all of the kid groups to be bigger by giving more coaches to each group, or at least having a better support system for our coaches so that they don't feel like they're overwhelmed with 8 kids instead of 6. And that's how we're going to be expanding our capacity, because we really are just maxed out on space. So that's how we determine our capacity. It's going to be a little different for different style of camps. Like we have a limited facility. Not all camps have the same sort of limitations.
Yeah. We have a question here on the point about capacity. Do you ever deal with pushback from other people in your organization when making decisions related to capacity?
Kind of. So the only pushback that we have for capacity isn't really about the capacity, it's about the space. So our coaches throughout the year, daytime hours are usually when they come in and do their training. So many of our coaches are part-time coaching staff, part-time gig performers. They go out and they get hired by people who are doing parties or other kinds of events and perform at those parties. And so they have to practice. And during the summer, all of the space is used by camps. So they can't.
Right.
And so the pushback we get is like, can you please make space for us to work out and stay in shape and practice our skills during camp hours? And it's hard. It's really hard. Fortunately for us, or fortunately for our coaches, our class offerings reduce during the summer, so they can usually find some space around everything in the evenings. Unfortunately, that is the hottest time of the day for our gym.
Yeah.
But you make do with what you can get. So that's our biggest pushback. We don't really get pushback on capacity decisions from any other direction. I mean, obviously we want to increase what we can offer because like we need the income. So like that's our motivator, part of our motivator for trying to find more spaces for kids in our camp. But we can only do what we can do. And we're pretty good at communicating here in that kind of regard. So people listen. It's great.
Yeah. That's actually a great segue. That was going to be my next question. You know, with us coming back from the pandemic, expectations have changed, behaviors have changed. How are you managing that when it comes to these kinds of things, like when it comes to capacity and whatnot, but also safety and your protocols? Like, what are some of the things that you've been doing consistently?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot there. The biggest thing I would say that I've learned in the last 2-3 years from all of this, we have to communicate. Our biggest like boon has been over communicating with our camp families. When we first started in 2020, when we first came back to camps in 2020, we like only had a couple weeks of classes before we had camps running. And it was, we actually, so we don't do this anymore. This was a 2020 exclusive thing, but we made everyone attend a Zoom meeting prior to coming to camp so that we could update them on all of the COVID policies. Because at that point, everyone was creating COVID policies. Like we had just come out of lockdown, like everything was crazy. And we wanted to make sure everyone knew exactly what we were talking about. Now everybody kind of knows what COVID policies are and like what they might look like. So we don't have to do the Zoom meeting, but we do over communicate. We send them a confirmation email when they sign up for camp. We send them an email prior to camp that's like, here's all of our policies. Here's what to send your kid with. Here's all of the reminders. It's a lot to read, but it's important. We send them another reminder the morning of camp that's like, remember to bring your mask and we're going to take your temperature and all of these things, or at least we were last year. And we also send them something halfway through that's like, your kid's going to have a little performance on the last day of camp. If you want to see it, this is the time to come. And we send them one at the end that's like, please fill out this survey. Like we send them like 5 emails. It's crazy. But it's really important. And then they feel cared about. Your over communication. Sometimes people are like, oh my God, stop sending me emails. But really, when it comes to like parents of kids, they want to know what their kid is going to be getting up to. They want to make sure their kid's prepared. They want to make sure their kid is safe. And so that over communication is actually really appreciated in most cases. It's also, to me, it's a little bit of a consent issue. Like when they sign up for camps, they get to see what our COVID policies are and what all of our safety policies are. If we make any changes to those, we have to tell them. Like we have to communicate to them because they consent.
Another Zoom meeting.
but they consented to sending their kid to camp with particular policies. If we get rid of, so we currently require masks unless you're in a room by yourself. And if we if we get rid of that mask mandate for our camps, we're going to be sending an email to everyone who signed up for camp, because some of those families may not want to send their kid if masks aren't required for everyone. So it's, it's a consent issue. They consented to a specific set of policies. Make sure that you update them on everything else, anything that changes.
I think it's something that was prompted because of COVID, but I think it applies in any and every situation. Like when you agree to something and that changes, people need to be informed. Yeah.
And it's something that I'm really like, I learned in a very concrete way because of COVID. Fortunately, we didn't have any like big mistakes or faux pas here with that, but I could see it. There were times where I was like, oh, we got to do this, or it's going to be a problem. So I was glad that we learned that lesson without making any big mistakes.
Yeah, for sure.
There was a question in the chat from Amanda that I felt like kind of works into this, because in prior conversations it kind of came up, but coming back after the pandemic, a lot of kids stayed at home. Parents are not as used to bringing their kids to activities. So Amanda's asking, how are you dealing with, let's say, unideal behavior from kids, but as well as parents?
Yeah, so we came up with a lot of things in 2020 because we knew kids were going to be stir crazy a little bit. And then even in 2021, the schools around here were mostly remote all through 2021. They had like just gone back to school at the end of the 2020 to 2021 school year, right? So they were finally back in person, but like barely, and not everyone. So all of them were used to sitting in front of a screen all day, and then they come to circus camp where they're physically active for basically at least 5 of the 6 hours that they're here. They're not used to that. They're all tired by like Wednesday. They're like, I can't move, my body's sore. And some of them, it's the first time that's happened. So something that we started doing a lot of in 2020 and has continued because it's just worked so well is we have coloring pages and like beads and origami and like sit down activities that if somebody doesn't want to do something, that's okay, right? That's okay. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they're having an emotional day. Maybe they miss their mom who's on a business trip.
Right.
You don't know, right? And sometimes they just need to sit down and color instead. And what has been absolutely amazing for us is our like young high school age kids who are usually like our youth performance company kids, like I was talking about, but the younger ones who aren't really, they're too young to really work. But they're in high school, and most of the high schools around here, you have to have volunteer hours as part of like your graduation requirement is like 100 volunteer hours or 50, or I don't know what the number is, but they have to volunteer for nonprofit organizations, which we are. And so they would come and they just hang out with the kids. They're not responsible for the kids' safety. They're not like in any sort of like dangerous situation kind of thing, because what we do is dangerous. That's why we train people to spot and keep the kids safe while they're doing the activities. But these kids who are doing the volunteer hours, they don't have to do any of that. They're just there to be an emotional regulation for the kids, and
just to keep them company.
We just like send them into like a corner with some beads, and they just sit and make bracelets, or we would set up tents outside with tables, and they would sit at those for lunch so that it's open.
Oh, we don't hear Sara anymore, do we? I don't.
No, Sara, your audio is cutting out just a little.
Can you guys hear me again?
Oh, you're back.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. I don't know what happened. Internet. So we had tables outside, and sometimes the kids needed to just like leave their group. And so you could send them outside with one of the volunteers and they can color on a table. And so that's some of the ways that we manage like kid behavior. The volunteers really helped. Sometimes if we didn't have a volunteer, because we didn't always, the camp manager, whoever was like our on-site manager for the day, would be in the like office that we have, and it's kind of a like darker room. It doesn't have an outside window. We had like a nice soft like carpet on the floor and a weighted blanket and a bunch of really squishy stuffies. And sometimes you have a kid that's just super overwhelmed, super emotionally unregulated, and they just need a quiet, dark place to go and tell you about how they miss their mom. And that's okay. Or about how they're nervous about like family friend that they haven't seen in 10 years. Well, I guess they're probably not that old. So in like 3 years, and, they are like, they know me, but I don't remember them. And then they tell you all about it without you asking, you know, because they just need to process their feelings. And so giving kids the space to do that feelings processing, because they've all been at home. They're all used to being online. They're not used to being in this like active classroom setting. And they don't know how to regulate in that setting. So giving them the space to step back and figure out how to regulate external, like separate from the group. And then, you know, they go back when they're ready. And the thing about it is like, we have kids do that and they do go back. They go back on their own. Sometimes you get the kid who's like, I don't want to do anything. And great, they get to be bored in the office with you for 2 hours. They're going to choose to go back out and join the group eventually because they're just going to be totally bored. And that works. We also have seen kind of changes, some of the other changes that we've seen with kids. Prior to the pandemic, we almost always tried to separate siblings and not have them in the same group, just because they inevitably were like one sibling's bossing the other one around, or like you get like weird banter going on. It's just easier to not have them in the same group. But in 2020, we all kept them in the same, like any family groups that we could keep together, we kept together because of COVID and spread. And since then, a lot of these kids are more used to being in like at-home classroom settings, but classroom settings nonetheless, with their siblings and like spending more time with their siblings and doing more activities with their siblings. And they actually function better as sibling pairs now. So we've started keeping them together instead. It's like total 180 of what we used to do and what we do now. And it's because of the pandemic. So
I think like we just lost some of our social skills, and I can imagine coming back from all of that, having a familiar face around is probably nice.
I think it does. I think that's a big part of it, and it really makes a difference for some of the kids. I mean, we have our camp started age 6, so if you think about it, some of these kids don't really remember pre-pandemic because they were 3 when it started. They don't remember anything. They remember masked faces and weird policies. It's not weird to them. It's just normal.
And have you had instances where you've had challenging behavior from parents? Because that was the question. Like, we kind of anticipated on the participant side some of these changes would be happening, but when it comes to the parents as well, has that happened? Like, what has been your experience?
I think I froze. Can you hear me?
Well, your audio is fine.
Okay, great. As long as the audio is good. I just can't see anybody moving. So I assumed that something had
You're back, I think.
Great. Okay. We have had some pushback from parents. So we have stayed the whole time we've had closures and things, we've stayed on the more cautious end of policy. So like I said before, we're still masking in most situations. We require vaccinations for 12 and up right now. And those policies mean that we haven't had anybody come at us and say, like, why aren't you being more strict? The only reactions we've had are, why are you still requiring masks? Like, this is ridiculous. What's happening? You know, and that's where that communication really comes in, is like over communicating your policies, and people know what to expect. And if they come at you and be like, why are you still requiring this? I didn't know you were requiring this. It's, well, we emailed you 3 times telling you that we require it.
Right.
So if you don't want to be here, you didn't have to sign up for camp, or you could have withdrawn months ago when we recommunicated our policies to you, or weeks ago when we recommunicated our policies to you.
Right.
So like that's helped us a lot in those situations where we've had people complain, is just to be able to point at the communication and go, we tried to start this conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know why you didn't engage with it until now. Can you tell
Right.
me? And then they usually stop.
Yeah.
So over communication has helped a lot. You're always going to deal with a little bit of something, but if you have something concrete to point to, they leave you alone. You don't end up with like a big confrontation for the most part. Having a good like chain to send things up to. So like if someone does have a complaint and they're like, I want to make a formal complaint, having someone to send them to is also really good. So our executive director here has been really gracious about being like, if someone has a complaint with a policy and they get really upset about it, just send them to me. And having somebody who's willing to take that on is also really helpful. And you know, if you're the person who's in charge of your organization, being that person is a great way to support your staff through things, because they appreciate it. I was doing that for some of summer because during our last couple summers, I was actually in charge of our office team, and they're the ones who usually get those complaints. And so I was like, send them to me, just send them my way. I will cite our policies at them all day. I don't care.
Right.
No problem.
Yeah, for sure. And as you kind of start opening back up and you're dealing with all of this high demand and things like that going into 2023, what are some of the challenges, but also opportunities that you're anticipating?
Yeah, I mean, so trying to get a new structure and trying out a new structure is a really big thing that we're looking forward to, and like trying to figure out how to make that work. I think it's going to be good for the kids to have someone. Our structure in past years has been a little bit like they stay with the same group of kids, but maybe they rotate coaches as they rotate activities. And having like a camp counselor, somebody who's their adult to go with them through that whole time, I think is going to be good for the kids. That sort of emotional connection and support is a really valuable thing for the age groups that we work with. So that would be like one of those things that we're really looking for. Another thing that is specific to us, so prior to the pandemic, we had what we called Everybody's Circus, which is everybody's circus, which is like making circus accessible to everybody. And it's what we're now calling our circus access program. So making things accessible to people. You look at the crazy stuff that they do in Cirque du Soleil and you're like, I could never do that. Wrong. You can. We can do it. You absolutely can. You may not do what they're doing specifically, but you can try it. And there's ways to make it accessible. And we are actually in the hiring process for a circus access programs manager here at SANCA. And we're hoping to be able to incorporate some of that in our camps this summer, so that kids who have like ADHD, behavioral issues, maybe even like some mobility issues, or like physical challenges and disabilities, those sorts of things. We're really hoping to be able to ramp up and like bring that back and make that accessible to camps as well. And not just like private lessons where like you can come in and do kind of a one-on-one thing, but if you don't have the resources to support you in a regular class, like we're trying to get those resources so that we can have support in regular classes and regular camps and things like that. Because I think it's going to be even more in demand. As we get out of the pandemic, these kids who have like a lot of kids with higher like mobility needs or support needs in schools also are in a lot of the same demographics that have like are immunocompromised, or like they've had to be really careful because they're going to the hospital all the time for something, for testing, whatever it is, so they can't get COVID. And so as we start like coming out of this COVID nightmare that we've all been in for 3 years, they're starting to like come back to camps and look for those opportunities again. And we want to be able to offer that. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can see that we are almost up to an hour, so I'm going to do a last call out for questions. If you have any, that we've been trying to get to them throughout the conversation, but if you have any more that you want to talk about, please share them in the Q&A, and we can address those as well. And what about opportunities for growth while we wait for those questions? So this one is, and it's a challenge and an opportunity, but as your camps continue to grow, one of the things that was at the top in the poll was registrations and managing registrations. So like, what are you doing as your offerings continue to grow on that front?
Yeah, so I mean, a big part of it for us has been always doing limited ones at the beginning, making sure we can staff more, and then offering more. That's a big part of it. We also always staying on top of it. So we have a front office team who's here every day. We're open 7 days a week, so they're here every day. And anytime we have questions or things like that, always having them available to answer those questions and like find the answers. Sometimes, because sometimes they don't know them, but they know who to ask or they know where to look. And then we also have a person for summer camps in particular who's like in charge of camps. And so they're the one who's able to like focus on that. For me, when I'm trying to manage camps, it's like a tiny part of my full-time job, right? And I just don't have the ability to focus on it. But having someone whose sole job is that, even if they're just part-time, that's their focus for while they're doing their hours for SANCA, and that makes a huge difference.
For sure. Yeah. We've got a question from Amanda who's asking, have you ever had to drop a child from your program?
Yes. We have had people selectively like self-select out, and we've had to ask people to leave. There's actually a family in particular that we currently have a rule. Every single one of their kids, except for the oldest one, is always a bit of a handful. And I don't like to blame it on the kids. I don't like to say like, this kid is difficult. Like that's never nice. And it doesn't help the children. But this particular family, they have 4 kids, and 3 of them cannot be in camp at the same time. And we have told this parent, like, when you sign your kids up for camp, you have to sign them up for different weeks, because we do not have the resources to help them the way that they need help all at the same time. We just don't. And so like, we haven't actually dropped them. They are still allowed to be here. We just have rules about how they're supposed to be here. And we have had to completely withdraw students before and just say like, hey, this is not the situation. Like, this is not the place for your kid to be. Here's what you should be doing with your kid, maybe. I mean, we don't want to be prescriptive to parents. We don't want to tell them like, this is how to take care of your kid. But like this style of programming is not going to work for your child. Your child needs more support than we are able to provide. And that's usually the tactic we take with that. So. Right.
Got it. Okay. Well, I think we're at time. So if there are no more questions, we will end it at this point. I'm just gonna do a quick little check. Yeah, well, I think that was it. We've answered questions that came up. If you think of any, you can always write to us. You'll be receiving an email with the recording of this webinar. So that's it for today, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in and engaging with us. We really enjoyed reading your comments and your questions. I'm going to say goodbye now. Have a great day and week. Until next time.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.